Here is part 1 in simple English and a natural human tone. She grew up in a small neighborhood where everybody knew each other, and nothing much ever changed. Most days felt quiet and ordinary, but inside her heart she carried a dream that made her different from others her age. From the time she was little, she loved standing in front of the mirror and practicing the things she wished she could get better at. She wasn't perfect, and she knew it. Her voice cracked sometimes, her steps weren't always smooth, and her movements looked awkward. But she kept practicing, repeating the same parts again and again until she felt a little better than the day before. At first, it was only a hobby she kept to herself, something she did when the house was silent and nobody was paying attention. But as she grew older, her dream grew with her. She wanted people to see her, to believe in her, to cheer for her one day. But that wasn't what happened. When she tried showing her talent at school or among friends, the reaction was the opposite of what she hoped for. People made faces. Some giggled behind her back. Others whispered loud enough for her to hear. A few didn't even try to hide their judgment. They repeated the same lines again and again, telling her she wasn't good enough, that she should stop trying, that she didn't have the talent she imagined she had. It hurt her. She acted like she didn't care, but inside she felt each comment like a small cut. She was still young, but she understood clearly how hard it was to carry a dream while people around her kept poking holes in it. Every time someone mocked her, she went home and closed her door softly, trying not to show her hurt to anyone. In the privacy of her room, she would sit down on the floor, hugging her knees, wondering if they were right. Maybe she really wasn't good enough. Maybe she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. The thought scared her. But there was another part of her, a quiet part that refused to give up. Even on the days when she felt defeated, she still practiced. She didn't practice because someone encouraged her. She practiced because she couldn't stop herself. Something inside her felt alive when she tried. She couldn't explain it to anyone, but it made her feel like herself. And so she kept going. Her neighborhood wasn't a place filled with support or applause. People there got used to routine. They believed dreams were things only lucky people achieved. So when she tried to shine in her own small ways, they didn't understand it. They didn't see the potential she felt. They only saw imperfections, and they never let her forget them. At school, she wasn't treated any better. Whenever she tried to participate in small events or show her skill, some of her classmates rolled their eyes. A few even openly laughed. It became normal for them to treat her like someone who always failed before she even tried. She heard comments like, "Why does she even bother?" Or, "Here she goes again." Each time, she felt her courage shrink a little. Still, she never fully walked away from her dream. She just learned to hide it better. She practiced at night when the house got quiet. She played videos on her small phone, copying every move or every sound she admired. She whispered to herself that one day she would get better. She didn't know when, but she believed improvement would come if she worked hard enough. When she was alone, she let herself imagine a different world. A world where she stood on a stage and people actually listened. A world where her effort mattered. A world where she wasn't the girl people mocked but someone who surprised them. These little moments of imagination didn't solve her problems, but they kept her going. They gave her tiny pieces of courage when she had none. Her family noticed her practicing sometimes, but they didn't take it seriously. They thought it was just something she would eventually grow out of. Her parents didn't discourage her, but they didn't cheer for her either. They told her to focus on school, to think about practical things, to avoid wasting time on talents that might never pay off. Their words weren't harsh, but they still carried a weight that made her question herself again. She didn't argue with them. She didn't try to explain herself. Instead, she nodded politely, pretending she understood, even though she didn't. Deep inside, she felt confused. She wanted to make her family proud, but she also wanted to follow the pull in her heart. She didn't know how to do both, so she tried to balance everything quietly, carrying her dream like a secret she hoped to protect. One day, when she was practicing outside in a quiet corner, she overheard a group of kids talking about her. They didn't know she was there. They laughed about how she always tried to show off but wasn't any good. They told each other she looked silly when she tried to perform. Listening to them felt like standing in cold rain without shelter. She froze, staring at the ground, hoping they would go away. After they left, she sat alone for a long time, feeling embarrassed and defeated. For the first time in a long while, she thought about giving up completely. She wondered if her dream was too big for someone like her. She wondered if it was better to stop trying than to keep being a target of jokes. That evening, she didn't practice. She simply sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall in silence. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. She woke up early, before anyone else in the house. The world outside was quiet. She stood in front of the mirror again, not because she felt confident, but because she couldn't stop thinking about how much she loved doing this. Even the fear, the embarrassment, and the mockery couldn't erase that feeling. She took a deep breath and started practicing again. Her moves were slow at first, shaky, unsure, but as the minutes passed, she felt her rhythm returning. She felt her heart settle. She realized something important in that quiet morning. She didn't need everyone to believe in her. She needed to believe in herself first. And that belief, even if small, was enough to take another step. She still didn't know how far she could go. She didn't know if anything would ever change. But she knew she wasn't ready to let go of her dream. Not yet. She wanted to see where it could take her. So she kept practicing. Day by day. Little by little. With hope in her heart. Even when the world around her didn't see her worth yet. That was the beginning of her journey. The quiet, unseen part. The part no one respected or believed in. But it was also the part that shaped her the most. The part that taught her what it meant to keep going, even when she felt small. And one day, without realizing it, this persistence would carry her farther than anyone expected. She woke up each day with a mix of hope and heaviness, unsure which feeling would win. Her dream was still alive inside her, but so were the echoes of the comments she heard every day. The more she tried to grow, the more people seemed to push her down. It wasn't just children anymore. As she got older, the doubts around her grew stronger, louder, and heavier. She felt like she was carrying a weight that no one else could see. At home, things stayed the same for a long time. Her family went about their daily routines. They cared for her, but they didn't fully understand what she was trying to achieve. They thought her dream was just a phase that she would outgrow. When she practiced in her room, they would knock on the door and remind her to keep the noise down or to pay attention to schoolwork. She listened quietly, even when she wanted to tell them how important it was to her. Most days she kept her feelings inside, not wanting to start a discussion she wasn't ready to fight. She didn't blame her family. They had grown up in a world where dreams were often seen as luxury. They believed in stability and routine, not chances and risks. She understood that, but still, it hurt her when she felt ignored or misunderstood. She wished someone would look at her and say, "I see your effort. Keep going." But no one did. School brought even more pressure. Every time there was an event, she wanted to take part. She told herself that maybe this time would be different. Maybe she would finally show people that she was improving. But whenever she thought about signing up, she remembered the whispers from before. She remembered the way her classmates glanced at her, as if waiting for her to fail again. There were days she tried to avoid people. She walked through the school hallways with her eyes lowered, hoping no one would notice her or bring up her dream in a mocking voice. But even when she stayed quiet, someone always managed to make a comment. Sometimes it was a joke. Sometimes it was an eye roll. Sometimes it was a loud laugh. It didn't matter what form it came in. The message was always the same. They didn't believe in her. Because of this, she started practicing only when she was sure nobody else was around. She became good at hiding her passion. She memorized the times when her parents were busy, when her siblings were outside, when her neighbors weren't home, and when the streets were quiet. These were the moments she used to train. In those hidden hours, she pushed herself hard, repeating small details until she felt a little closer to what she imagined in her mind. But even with all that effort, her doubts grew stronger. She wondered if she was chasing something impossible. She wondered why improvement felt so slow. She wondered if people were right about her. She feared that maybe she really wasn't talented. The more she thought about their words, the more they clung to her, and slowly they began to shape her thoughts. She didn't want to admit it, but she was starting to believe some of the things they said. One afternoon, something small but heavy happened. She overheard two girls talking outside the classroom. They didn't know she was behind them. They were discussing a performance they had seen at an event a few months earlier, the one she had taken part in. One girl laughed as she described the moment. The other girl imitated her actions in an exaggerated, mocking way. They both laughed loudly. She stood still, unable to move. Her face grew warm with shame. She didn't cry, but she felt something inside her breaking. That evening, she couldn't bring herself to practice. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the same lines replay in her mind. She wondered if she should stop trying completely. Maybe her dream was only causing her pain. She didn't want to be the reason people laughed. She didn't want to embarrass herself anymore. But the strange thing was that even in her darkest moments, something inside her refused to let go. Even when her confidence felt like it had collapsed, a tiny spark stayed lit inside her. She didn't know how to explain it. She didn't know where that spark came from. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was passion. Maybe it was stubbornness. All she knew was that whenever she thought of quitting, that small spark whispered, "Not yet. Keep trying." A few days later, the school announced an upcoming event. It wasn't a big one, but it was important enough that many students were excited about it. They talked about the performances, the stage setup, and how they wanted to impress the teachers. She listened silently from her desk, feeling two battles inside her. Fear on one side and desire on the other. She wanted to participate. She wanted another chance. She wanted to show herself that she could improve. But every time she thought about signing up, she remembered the laughter, the judgment, and her previous failures. It felt like she was standing at a cliff, unsure whether she should step forward or step back. The day before the sign-up sheets were due, she sat alone on a bench after school. The sky above was a soft shade of gray, and the wind felt calm. She watched other students walking home in groups, chatting, laughing, moving through the world with ease. She wondered why things felt so hard for her when others seemed to move effortlessly. While she was sitting there, an older woman who worked at the school walked past her. She paused for a moment and said something unexpected. She told her she had seen her practice before, not once but many times. She said she had noticed the effort, the focus, and the passion in her eyes. She told her that she had something special, something raw, something real, that just needed time to grow. Those words fell into her heart like warm sunlight. She had no idea that anyone had ever noticed her. She didn't even know how to respond. She just listened quietly, trying to absorb every word. The woman didn't say much more, but what she said was enough to make her feel seen for the first time in a long time. That small conversation became a turning point. She didn't suddenly become confident overnight. She didn't magically forget the pain of being mocked, but she felt a small shift inside her. For the first time, someone had acknowledged her effort, and that gave her a little strength to stand again. The next morning, she walked into school with her heart beating fast. She went straight to the sign-up sheet. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. She hesitated for a moment, thinking about the fear, the doubt, the laughs she might face again. But then she thought about the spark inside her. She thought about the woman's words. She thought about all the quiet hours she had spent practicing. Before she could change her mind, she wrote her name on the paper. As soon as she did, she felt both scared and relieved. People around her might not believe in her, but for once, she didn't let their opinions make the decision for her. This time she chose to fight. She chose to try again. She chose to give herself another chance. She walked away from the sheet knowing this wasn't the end of her struggles. People would still doubt her. She would still have moments of fear. But she finally understood something important. Improvement comes from effort, not approval. And even though she didn't know it yet, this small decision would lead her toward a moment that would change everything. One remarkable performance that would make the world see her in a completely new way. She didn't realize how much courage it took to write her name on that sign-up sheet until she sat in her room that evening. The moment kept replaying in her mind. The shaking hands, the racing heartbeat, the fear that someone might see her and laugh. But mixed with all of that was another feeling, one she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt proud of herself. Even if it was a small step, it was hers, and nobody had forced it or talked her out of it. The next few days at school passed slowly. Every time she walked into the hallway, she wondered if people had checked the sign-up list. She wondered if they had seen her name and started whispering about it. Sometimes she thought she saw people glancing at her, but she couldn't tell if they were actually looking or if her own fear was playing tricks on her. But the real test came when the teacher in charge of the event made an announcement. She called out the names of the students who had signed up and asked them to stay after school for a meeting. When her name was said out loud, she felt a sharp twist in her stomach. For a moment, she considered pretending she didn't hear it. But she stayed. She forced herself to stay. The meeting wasn't anything extraordinary. The teacher talked about the event schedule, the type of performances allowed, and the practice arrangements. But while the teacher spoke, she couldn't stop looking around. Some students looked excited. Others looked confident. A few looked nervous. But there were also some who looked amused, like they couldn't wait for the chance to laugh at someone's mistakes. She didn't know what they were thinking, but she imagined that they were already judging her. Her palms grew sweaty. Her thoughts spun in circles. She kept reminding herself why she was there. She remembered the spark inside her, the hours she had practiced, the tiny encouragement she had received from the older woman. These memories helped her keep her head up. When she went home that day, she knew one thing clearly. If she wanted to perform, she needed to train harder than she ever had before. Practicing in secret had gotten her this far, but now the stage was waiting. And if she stepped onto it unprepared, the laughter would come louder than ever. So she made a plan for herself. Every day after finishing her homework, she would clear a small space in her room and start practicing. It didn't matter how tired she felt or how overwhelmed she was. She promised herself she wouldn't skip a single day. Practice wasn't always smooth. Some days things fell into place. Her movements felt controlled. Her rhythm felt steady. Her expression felt natural. But on other days everything felt wrong. Her timing was off. Her hands wouldn't stay still. She forgot steps she thought she had mastered. These frustrating moments brought tears to her eyes, but she didn't stop. Several times, she wanted to scream in frustration. She wanted to give up and collapse on her bed. But she kept replaying the thought of stepping on stage. She imagined the lights, the audience, the silence before she started. She imagined giving a performance that came from her heart. That image kept her going. During the week of rehearsals, the pressure grew even heavier. Students were asked to practice in an open space where everyone could see each other. It was the first time she had to perform in front of others before the real performance. Her chest tightened just thinking about it. On the first day of group rehearsals, her heart almost stopped when the teacher called her name. She stepped forward slowly, feeling dozens of eyes watching her every move. Some looked curious. Some looked bored. Some looked ready to judge. She started performing, but her fears got the better of her. Her hands shook. Her voice, if she needed to use it, trembled. Her steps didn't land the way she practiced at home. She made small mistakes she had already corrected before. When she finished, she could hear a few soft laughs behind her. They weren't loud, but they hurt more than loud ones ever could. She walked back to her place with her head down, fighting the urge to cry. For a moment, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Maybe she really wasn't ready. Maybe she didn't belong there. Maybe she should just quit before the real event arrived. But she didn't quit. She reminded herself that everyone makes mistakes at first. Everyone feels nervous. Even the confident students had shaky starts, they just hit it better. So she chose to focus on one thing, improving. That night, she practiced longer than usual. She didn't stop even when her legs felt weak. She didn't stop when her back started hurting. She told herself that the stage wasn't going to give her a second chance, so she needed to be ready when the moment came. As the days passed, something started to change. She didn't become perfect overnight, but her confidence began to grow little by little. She still felt nervous during rehearsals, but now she learned to breathe through it. Her movements grew smoother, her expressions more natural, and slowly, she started feeling like she belonged there. One afternoon, while she practiced in a corner of the open hall, she noticed someone watching her. It was one of the students who had laughed at her before. She froze for a moment, expecting another joke or rude comment. But the student said nothing. They just watched with a strange expression, something like surprise. It took her a moment to realize that the student wasn't laughing this time. They were actually paying attention. And for the first time, she didn't feel embarrassed. She felt strong. She felt like she was finally showing improvement that couldn't be ignored. The next day, something else happened. Another student approached her and asked if she was going to perform at the event. When she nodded, they said softly, "You've gotten better." It wasn't a compliment she expected. It wasn't even said with enthusiasm, but it meant everything to her. She went home that day feeling lighter. For the first time, she felt like her effort was visible. Not just to herself, but to others too. She didn't need applause or praise. Just knowing that someone noticed her growth was enough to keep her going. As the event day approached, the entire school buzzed with excitement. Decorations were put up. The stage was being prepared. Students talked about their outfits, their music, their routines. Teachers discussed the schedule and responsibilities. She stayed quiet, observing everything. Her heart beat faster each time she walked past the stage area. She imagined herself standing there, facing the crowd. The thought scared her, but it also filled her with determination. One evening, while she practiced alone in her room, she paused to look at herself in the mirror. She didn't look like the same person she was a year ago. Her eyes held a new kind of focus. Her posture had more confidence. She wasn't just a girl who hoped to be good. She was someone who worked for it. She thought about everything she had gone through, the mockery, the doubt, the fear, the loneliness. All of it had brought her here. All of it had shaped her. And while she didn't like the pain, she understood that it was part of her journey. The night before the performance, she barely slept. She lay awake, imagining every detail of the next day. She didn't know how people would react. She didn't know if she would impress them or disappoint them. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to walk away from the stage. Not this time. She was ready to fight for her dream, not with anger or competition, but with heart, effort, and courage. She wanted to show everyone, even those who doubted her, that she wasn't the same girl they once mocked. And deep inside, she hoped that maybe, just maybe, this performance would be the one that changed everything. The morning of the performance felt different from any other day. She woke up before the sun even rose, unable to sleep any longer. Her heart was already beating fast, as if it knew what was coming. The house was quiet, everyone still asleep, and for a moment she sat on the edge of her bed listening to the stillness. She tried to steady her breathing, but every inhale felt sharp, every exhale shaky. She stood in front of the mirror like she always did before practicing. But today wasn't about practicing. Today was about doing. She looked at her reflection and saw the nervousness in her eyes, but she also saw something else, determination. She had worked too hard to back out now. She had struggled too much to give up. She had promised herself she would step on that stage no matter what happened. As she got ready, she kept thinking about everything that had led her here. The secret practice sessions, the whispers at school, the small encouragement she received, the courage it took to sign her name, the shaky rehearsals, the slow improvement. All of it had brought her to this moment. She felt scared, but she also felt ready. When she reached school, the entire place was buzzing with excitement. Students were moving around with costumes, props, and nervous energy. Teachers gave instructions, checked lists, and tried to keep everything organized. The stage was already set up with lights and a long curtain that swayed slightly as people walked past it. She headed to the performer's waiting area. Her hands were cold, so she rubbed them together. Her stomach felt twisted, and her throat felt dry. She wondered if everyone felt the same way or if she was the only one shaken by nerves. But then she saw the stage from up close. It looked bigger than she expected. The lights were brighter. The seats seemed endless. Just imagining all the people who would be watching made her feel like her legs might give out. She tried to distract herself by watching other performers prepare. Some stretched their arms. Some practiced lines under their breath. Some bounced on their feet to release tension. She tried doing the same little warm-up exercises she always did at home, and somehow that familiar routine helped her calm down. Slowly, more students arrived, and she felt the atmosphere shifting. Some of them glanced at her. She didn't know if they were judging or just curious. She stood quietly, not wanting to draw attention to herself. She kept reminding herself why she was here, to perform, not to prove something to anyone else. When the event began, the sound of applause filled the hall. One performance after another went on stage. Some students did well. Some made mistakes. Some stumbled. But each time, the crowd applauded anyway. Watching them eased her nerves a little. She realized that nobody was perfect. Everyone was trying their best. And that was okay. But her calmness didn't last long. Every time the teacher came out with the list of performers, her heart raced. She knew her name would appear sooner or later. She kept moving her fingers nervously, trying to keep them from shaking. Then it happened. The teacher called her name. For a moment, everything around her went quiet. She felt like her heartbeat was the only sound in the world. She swallowed hard. Her legs felt heavy as she walked toward the stage entrance. One of the helpers handed her a microphone or signaled her forward depending on her performance type. She held it carefully, afraid she might drop it. The curtains were only a few steps away now. She could hear the crowd on the other side, students, teachers, parents, all chatting softly. She took one last deep breath. Her chest felt tight, but she didn't let that stop her. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered inside her head, "You've worked for this. You belong here." When the curtain opened, she stepped forward. The lights hit her immediately. They were so bright she could barely see the audience. But she could feel their presence. A wave of fear washed over her, but she steadied herself. She positioned her feet the way she practiced, relaxed her shoulders, and let her routine begin. The first few seconds were the hardest. Her hands felt stiff, her breathing uneven. Her body remembered what to do, but her mind was still caught in fear. She worried that she would forget everything. She worried that she would make a mistake everyone would laugh at. But then something unexpected happened. As she focused on the movements and steps she had practiced hundreds of times, her fear began to fade. Her breathing slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. Her mind stopped racing. It was as if her body took over, moving through the routine naturally, smoothly, with a rhythm she had built through countless hours of practice. She could feel the audience watching her. But instead of hearing whispers or laughter, she felt silence. A focused silence. The kind that meant people were paying attention. They weren't making fun of her. They weren't waiting for her to fail. They were watching. For the first time, she felt something she had never felt on stage before, confidence. She stepped, turned, moved, or performed whatever her routine required with a freedom she didn't know she had. Her fear slowly transformed into energy. Her nervousness became passion. She poured her heart into every moment, every expression, every movement. Her eyes lifted slightly as she neared the end of her performance. And in that moment, she saw something through the bright lights. Faces watching her, not with mockery, but with surprise. Some looked impressed. Some looked speechless. Some even looked proud. She didn't let the sight distract her, but it encouraged her, fueled her. It reminded her why she had fought so hard. She wasn't doing this to change their opinion. She was doing it to honor her own effort. The final seconds of her performance felt like a blur. She felt light, almost weightless. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence in the hall. A deep breath of stillness. Then the applause came. It wasn't polite or forced. It was loud, genuine, and warm. The kind of applause she had always dreamed of. The sound washed over her like a wave. Her chest tightened, her eyes stung, but she kept herself from crying. She took a soft, respectful bow, still trying to understand what had just happened. As she walked backstage, her legs trembled again, but in a different way this time. It wasn't fear now, it was relief, disbelief, and something close to joy. She felt like she had stepped into another world, one where her effort finally made sense. The moment she crossed back into the waiting area, people looked at her differently. A few students approached her. One told her softly, "That was amazing." Another said, "I didn't know you could do that." Someone else added, "You proved everyone wrong." She didn't respond with pride or arrogance. She just smiled gently, feeling grateful. She didn't need to say anything. The performance had spoken for her. As she walked outside for a moment to breathe, she felt the cool air on her face. She closed her eyes, replaying everything in her mind. The lights, the silence, the applause. Felt unreal. She wished she could hold onto the moment forever. For the first time in her life, she felt like people saw her. Not as someone to mock, not as someone to doubt, but as someone with talent, effort, and heart. And in that quiet moment outside the stage, she realized something important. It wasn't the applause that mattered most. It wasn't the surprise on people's faces. It wasn't even the compliments. It was the fact that she had believed in herself when nobody else did. She had stepped onto that stage alone, carrying her fear, her pain, and her hope. And she had turned all of it into a performance that came from her heart. Little did she know, this moment would not only change how others saw her, it would change how she saw herself forever. When the day of the performance finally came, she woke up much earlier than usual. The sky outside was still dark, and for a moment she simply sat on the edge of her bed, letting the silence calm her nerves. She could feel her heart beating faster than normal, not because she doubted herself now, but because everything she had worked for was finally reaching its moment of truth. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath, reminding herself why she started this journey in the first place. She thought about the people who doubted her in the beginning, the ones who made it sound like she was reaching too high. Their words used to hurt her deeply, but over time she had learned to use them as fuel, letting them push her forward instead of holding her back. She remembered the times she practiced late into the night, the moments when her muscles ached, and she wanted to stop but didn't. She remembered how she kept going even when no one believed she could do it. Those memories filled her with a quiet kind of strength. She got ready slowly, carefully, wanting everything to be perfect. She didn't rush. She moved with intention, as if each small action helped build her confidence. When she finally left home, the sun was rising, painting the sky in soft colors. The road to the performance hall felt shorter that morning, as if the world was encouraging her to keep walking. When she arrived, the place was full of energy. Performers were moving around, some excited, some nervous, some trying to pretend they were fine when they obviously were not. But she stayed calm. She had already fought her biggest battles long before stepping into this building. Now she was only here to show the result of everything she had overcome. She changed into her performance clothes and stood in front of the mirror. For a moment she studied her own reflection. She didn't see the person others doubted. She didn't see someone fragile. Instead, she saw someone who had grown stronger, someone who worked hard even when the results were slow, someone who had refused to quit even when giving up seemed easy. She gave herself a small smile and whispered a quiet reminder that she was ready. As she waited backstage, she listened to the audience settling in their seats. The sound of people talking, laughing, and shuffling filled the hall. The lights were bright, the air felt warm, and everything around her reminded her that this was a real moment, not something happening in a daydream. She held her hands together and focused on her breathing, not to calm fear but to stay grounded. Finally, someone called her name for her turn. She stepped forward slowly, and as she reached the stage entrance, she paused for just a second. She wanted to take in the feeling, the anticipation hovering in the air. Then she stepped out into the light. For half a second, the brightness of the stage lights made it hard to see the crowd, but she didn't need to. She could feel the presence of every person sitting there, waiting to see what she would do. Instead of letting that scare her, it filled her with determination. As the performance began, she felt herself slip into the mindset she had trained for. Her movements were steady and precise at first, testing the space around her, connecting her mind and body. She heard the soft reaction of the audience, the quiet murmurs of people leaning forward, paying closer attention. Bit by bit, she let the story of her performance unfold. Every part of it came from her real experiences, the struggles, the frustration, the small victories, and the strength she found in places she didn't expect. She didn't force anything. She moved naturally with a softness that carried weight. She added power where it mattered, grace where it counted, and emotion that felt real rather than performed. As she continued, the room became silent. The kind of silence that only happens when people are completely focused. She didn't have to look up to know she had their full attention. She could feel it. She could feel how they were connecting with what she was expressing. Not because she pretended to be someone else, but because she dared to show who she really was. Toward the middle of the performance, there was a moment she had struggled with during practice. Many times she had almost given up on it because it felt too hard. But now, standing on that stage, something inside her shifted. She remembered every doubt she had ever heard, every time she had been underestimated. Instead of letting those memories hurt her, she pushed through the move with more strength than she expected. When she landed it perfectly, she didn't need applause to know she had achieved something important. The rest of the performance flowed with a sense of freedom she had never felt before. It no longer felt like she was performing for approval. She was performing for herself. She was showing everyone what she had become, and in those moments she wasn't afraid of being judged anymore. She felt completely in control. As she finished the final part of the performance, she held the last position with complete stillness. For a few seconds, nobody made a sound. Then the applause began. It started softly, almost as if the audience needed a moment to process what they had seen, and then it grew louder and stronger. People stood up from their seats, clapping, cheering, and showing her a level of appreciation she had never expected. She lowered her hands slowly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Not because she wanted attention, but because she finally understood something important. She had proved to herself that she was capable. All the doubts she had carried for years felt like they were fading away. Backstage, she received compliments from people who had never spoken to her before. Some told her that her performance moved them. Others said they could feel her emotions clearly. A few admitted they hadn't expected her to be that good. Instead of feeling annoyed by that, she simply smiled, because she knew she had changed their perception without needing to argue or explain anything. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, she walked slowly through the quiet hallway, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. She stepped outside into the cool evening, lifting her face toward the sky. The night felt calm and peaceful, as if the world was congratulating her. She knew her journey wasn't ending here. This performance was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, and more people who might underestimate her. But now she had proof, real proof, that she could rise above all of it. She walked home with steady steps, not in a rush, not overly excited, but with a quiet confidence that came from deep inside. She was no longer the person who was mocked or doubted. She had turned their words into strength, their skepticism into motivation, and their disbelief into a remarkable moment. And she knew that from this point forward, no matter what anyone said, she would keep moving forward with the same courage and determination that brought her here today.